Hey guys, so I'm on my lunch break and I just really want to talk about the difference between the mind, the heart, and the self. I'm just going to start by stating that the self is in a different category, so we're going to keep it over here when compared to both the mind and the heart. So bear with me. Between the two, the mind is more associated with the physical world. So thoughts are made through observations of past, present, or future. Here, the mind can be analytical, it can fall into patterns of anxiety or pathologic processes. Usually we hear thoughts as if they were a voice in our head, or we may see a visual that our mind creates to show us something. And then on the other hand, we have the heart. Now, the heart speaks to us in the language of feelings. So this is not a voice, this is not pictures or scenes. It doesn't speak to us so much through the classical five senses as the mind does. One might argue that this statement is false because it speaks to us through feeling. Now, I agree that it might speak to us more in a sense of interoception, but I want to clarify that it does not speak to us through the language of actual feeling of touch, pressure, temperature, vibration, or proprioception, which is what the physical sense of feeling is referring to. So instead, the language of feelings is more like, say, like the wind rushing past you. It's more like a current changing. It's more of an ethereal, transient sensation, as if you were walking into a cloud that carried a certain vibration or energy, if you can picture that. The point is that just like thoughts, we can sit with and move through our feelings. When we experience them, they're merely observations of a state of being. We're always feeling something with the energy of the heart. We only really pay attention to those feelings or even comment on it when we're feeling extremes like surprise, devastation, maybe we're feeling a little butthurt, maybe we're feeling pride. So these are just examples, but we're always feeling something. It might just be like a sensation of mellow contentment or an undertone of anxiety, worry, or just mehness. I bet you didn't know that mehness was an emotion, but it is because I said so. Just like the current or the wind, those feelings can change from one moment to the next. And this is important to recognize because neither thoughts or feelings are fixed. The only part of the equation that is permanent is that of the observer or the self. So when we can recognize that we are not our thoughts or our feelings, it makes it easier to experience and to witness those thoughts and feelings, particularly when they're difficult or causing distress. So a mentor of mine shared with me a wonderful example that I love. It's a great visual example of this process. So what we do is we take our left hand and we hold it in a fist with our right hand. Now our left hand represents the self, while our right hand can be our emotions or thoughts. So when we put our hands together and we shake from our right hand, this represents thoughts or feelings, and our left hand begins to shake too. But when we separate the two hands, our right hand, the thoughts or feelings continue to shake and change, wax and wane, lift and dip, expand and contract, while the left hand is unaffected. It's steady and unchanged. So this is representative of self-awareness, to becoming an observer of ourselves, of our feelings, of our thoughts, and realizing that we're not our thoughts or feelings. Again, I like to remind myself of this as I personally go through some very challenging times in my life. And I'm often faced with unknowns, unknowns that could potentially destroy or build my future and influence the well being of my young children who depend on me. So, needless to say, these are sometimes really big and scary feelings, and I feel at times responsible and overwhelmed by anxiety and indecision. But when I remember that I am not my thoughts and I am not my feelings, that I am self, the observer of my thoughts and feelings, it helps me to just distance myself from them just enough that I can get perspective. It helps me to feel more centered and then get curious about what my feelings might be telling me about the current situation, or what my thoughts might say about fears, beliefs forged from my past experiences, maybe what they say about my confidence level, my principles, which also tell me a lot about where I am at that point in my life. But when I reflect as self, I'm able to separate the two and to understand who I am presently which gives me security and clarity about the present moment. It helps me to understand myself better and to make more informed and empowered decisions so that I may be more effective in the present moment rather than just getting dragged along for what often feels like a roller coaster ride that I was convinced that I was on. So, one of my favorite quotes by Lao Tzu states that if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. But if you're at peace, you're living in the present. So I'd like to take it a step further and add that if you're able to witness your feelings and emotions in the present as self, then you're not only at peace, but you're empowered. You're empowered by your higher self. And then this allows you in turn to see clearer, and it gives you a wider perspective from that vantage point, which means more options, more solutions, and more potentials. And that, my friends, is the seat of the self. Some may say of the soul, but whatever you call it, it's absolutely the best seat in the house.